a great honor for us to have you here, Hubie. Hubie came to us from New York City. We graduated from City College of New York, and he came here to get a master's degree in social work at the BU School of Social Work. But it wasn't long after that, after a few years as being a regular social worker, he's starting to become the associate director and then the director of the Roxbury Multi-Service Center. And if you're from around Boston, the Roxbury Multi-Service Center was really a central agency in Boston serving a lot of our children. He's going to tell us what happened while he was there, but I did want to say Hubie has gone on to do many, many things. He was the dean of the School of Social Work at BU and started over 30 organizations, social justice organizations in this town. So we'll get to know him a little more, and you'll see why we're in such awe of him and appreciate him. But can I turn the floor over to you? Thank you.
Well, good afternoon. You are alive and well?
Yes.
Okay, that's good to know. It is really my great pleasure to be here and to engage in some spirited give and take. I principally come because of my great respect and admiration for Susan Cole, who for decades has used her legal knowledge and skills to be a long-distance runner for social justice. And I greatly appreciate you, and when you called me, I couldn't say no. I'm glad that my wife, Kathy Butler-Jones, is here. In 1966, Kathy was one of the founders of the METCO program. And for 10 years, she coordinated the METCO program for the Newton Public Schools. Today, METCO serves 3,300 students in 33 suburban school systems. It is one of the most enduring, strongest metropolitan educational infrastructures in the history of the United States. Nothing like it. Nothing like it. So here's to Kathy. So my advocacy story starts with the Roxbury Multi-Service Center, which opened in January the 3rd, 1965, in the then heart of Boston's African-American community. It came into existence to provide a multiplicity of human services under one roof for mostly poor and working class residents. Social services, mental health services, legal services, home health services, housing services, employment services, and community organizing, which focus on building block associations and neighborhoods. All of these services were to be coordinated and integrated in a manner not to fragment our consumers. The Roxbury Multi-Service Center was a part of a national service movement to provide accessible and culturally relevant services to avoid having consumers, clients, fall between the spaces in the human services delivery system and get lost. It became a national model to provide a national model, and we had people from all over the country coming to Roxbury to find out how we did this work. I started out there on January 3rd, 1965 as the assistant director. In August 1965, I became executive director upon the retirement of Gertrude Cuthbert, an extraordinary social work leader and a powerful mentor of mine. By the fall of 1967, the center was experiencing a sizable number of children, students, in the Boston public schools who were being excluded from school because they were either Spanish-speaking, because there were no viable bilingual educational programs instruction. So they were left at home or in the streets, and you read the book. Then there was a class of children not allowed to attend school or made to leave school who were physically handicapped, pregnant, or deemed incapable of participating in normal school activities. And then there were students who were mentally retarded, emotionally disturbed, or perceptually handicapped, often mislabeled and consigned to quote-unquote special classes isolated from the mainstream of education and school activities. The major evaluation tool used at that time was the administration of a Stanford-Binet intelligence test. If the child got a cutoff score below 79, he or she was deemed to be retarded. It did not matter if you were non-English speaking and couldn't deal with the Stanford Binet, or if you were a product of awful schooling in the South, you got a below 79, you were consigned to a special class. In many cases, you did not get any viable kind of education. We got a lot of these children. So our RMSC, as a social service agency, adopted a case-by-case orientation. First, we initiated mental health evaluations, and in 85% of the cases, these excluded children were found not to be retarded or emotionally disturbed, or could function in regular classes with appropriate pedagogy and classroom management. We got a lot of these children back into school, but we had to place others in private school by raising funds to get them there, because we understood that the schools to which they would be going back to were too destructive. Faster than we got excluded students back into school, the Boston Public Schools spewed a whole group of other students out of school. So in the fall of 1967, my social work staff landed in my office and made it very clear to me we had a systemic problem on our hands, and I had better get about tough advocacy in order to end this crisis. Easier said than done. However, I now knew that I had to find a way, working in coalition with others, to lift a horrific social condition that had been going on for a long time to the level of a social problem. If you can't lift a social condition, you can have a social condition that can go on for many years, but if it can't be lifted to a social problem, there's nothing you can do about it, really. It has to be a problem that people understand, feel, and recognize that that has to be solved. So in December 1967, I had a good piece of luck. 2 Dartmouth students came to the Roxbury Multi-Service Center unannounced and asked me if there was anything of any substance they could do, community service they can do. They had a January month off, and they had to find an internship that would meet Dartmouth's requirements. I said, "You've come to the right place. We are going to put you upstairs on the 5th floor in a room, and you are going to go through all of the 3,000 cases we have here at the Multi-Service Center. And we want you to identify where there are kids who have been excluded from school, the reasons why they have been excluded from school, and tell us what the staff members who have been serving them were using as interventions to rectify the problem." They said, "Fine." And they worked, and by the end of January, they came back with their compilation of all of this data, and it was staggering, and it was clear that we had a substantial problem on our hands. So, now I had to find out if this problem was a citywide phenomenon or just endemic to Roxbury and North Dorchester, primarily the Black community. So on December 18th, 1968, we held a conference on the excluded child at the Roxbury Multi-Service Center, to whom we invited the members of social service and mental health centers across Boston to come share with us their experiences with the school exclusion problem. 35 social workers and mental health folks showed up for the conference, and within 15 minutes, it was clear that we had a citywide problem. They all indicated they were seeing this in the agencies in which they were working. The social workers pulled out their little black books and they started thumbing through them and then referring to the cases that they had. And it was clear to us that this is not just a reality for Roxbury and the black community. It was citywide. So we had to then decide, well, what do we do? And the small planning group came together, and we decided that, well, the first thing we had to do was to build an action system that was large enough, respected enough, and strong enough to take on the Boston Public Schools. We figured the way to do that was to form a task force that would look at and oversee a study on the problem. And we were clear that it was going to be a coalition, but it would not be a coalition of organizations. It would be a coalition of respected folks who were associated with strong and sometimes powerful organizations. We had been through, in 1963 and 1964, the unbelievable struggles with the Boston Public Schools over the matter of segregation in the Boston Public Schools. And it was a brutal battle. The black community and its leadership and others came at the Boston Public Schools in full force, trying to get them to admit that de facto segregation was going on and that they had a responsibility to do something about it. The Boston Public School Committee could not be moved. It was a real long struggle, and we knew that they were great into denial, and with this particular problem, they would probably be into denial, and that we had to have an action system that probably had enough respected people associated with it. So we then said, okay, let's hold a second conference on the excluded child.
But maybe what we should do is form a task force that would oversee a study to find out if there's anything to this and what the patterns are if they exist. So that's what I suggest. But I'm not getting into a fight with you. I'm not going to get into the trap of a fight and denial and all of this. What do you think about a task force? Well, everybody embraced the idea of a task force and a study. Well, principally because when you do it, we have the history. We had to have the history of studies, which usually get finished. They go on a bookshelf. No one ever implements the recommendations, and so they thought they were off the hook. Oh yeah, let's do a study. Yeah, I'm getting ready. No, yeah, fine. So they said to me, well, will you chair the task force? I said, absolutely.
What are you doing?
Yes, I'll chair the task force. I said, because I wanted to have control of the action system we were going to build. Okay? I said, yeah, I'll do it, sure. I said, now I'm going to ask all of you here, if any of you are called upon to serve on the task force, will you agree to do so? They said, yeah, sure. I said, fine. They said, okay, well, how are you going to do this study? How are you going to get this study going? I said, well, obviously I have to raise some money. I've got to have a director. I've got to have some staff. I've got to try to do it as cheaply as possible, but it has to be good, obviously. So they said, okay, we'll leave that in your hands. Okay? So then I went through the process of deciding with my planning committee on the multi-service center, who should we ask to be on the task force? And it was clear to me that what we needed to have on the task force were people who were professional, pretty much, who were well connected to important institutions in the community, the Department of Mental Health, the State Department of Education, blah, 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 blah. And then some of the people in the community was, and then my staff said, wait a minute, we ought to have parents on this thing. They're the beneficiaries of this. I said, well, I don't think so. I said, I'm big for parental empowerment, but we have got to build an action system that when it speaks, it's credible to the powers we're going to be dealing with. The parents will have a lot to do with this because they're going to be coming to the task force meetings and testifying and telling us all of their experiences. But when you have a report and you finish it, it's who speaks the facts. Who speaks the facts that's important. Particularly if you know you're going to be dealing with the media eventually.
Okay? Well, whoa. We had a lot of hinting around that. Okay? And so ultimately we prevailed and we put together a coalition of individuals associated with powerful, important institutions. It was not a coalition of organizations, an important distinction. I've been involved in coalitions of organizations. And when you get involved in a coalition of organizations, you have the challenge of having to go through organizations to get approval for every damn major thing you want to do. Okay? Now sometimes you have to do that in order to have an action system so big and so powerful when you're going after certain things. So we said, we're not going to go that way. Okay, we're not going to go there. This is going to be a coalition of individuals who are known to be influential, respected, and associated with powerful institutions. So then we had, fortunately, I had to go out and raise some money, but I also had to have somebody to direct this. So by accident, a young man by the name of Larry Brown, who was then a doctoral student at Brandeis, would come to visit the Multi-Service Center with his professor, Robert Perlman, who had been telling him about this is the center and this crazy guy, Hubie Jones, blah, 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 blah. Why don't you come see it? And he came to see it. And he said, what are you doing here? What's the interesting stuff? So, well, I said, we're about to get into a study of children excluded from school. He said, really? What is it? And we told him about it. He says, well, you know, I'd like to be the director of the study. He said, you wouldn't have to pay me because I have an NIMH fellowship that pays my tuition at Brandeis. But the deal would have to be that I could use some of the data for my doctoral dissertation. We said, you have a deal. You have a deal. You're going to be the director, and I'll go out and try to raise some money to make this happen. So you can have some staff, at least a little staff, to assist you. We got office space free at 888 Harrison Avenue that was owned by the BU Medical Schools, the Division of Psychiatry, so we had free office space. One of the directors of the Roxbury Multi-Service Center, when she heard what we were doing and that I needed some money, she said, well, she's a former actress. She said, well, I'm going to call my friend Samuel Goldwyn from Metro Goldwyn Mayer, remember? And so about a week later, she comes back and says, well, Sam Goldwyn has just sent me $5,000. Will that help? Woo! Okay, and everybody heard, whoa, we got, from Samuel Goldwyn, we got $5,000. Whoa! Okay, and at that time, that was a big money. In fact, I figured it would only cost us $15,000 to do this, and most of that money would be for the printing of the study at the end and its dissemination. And that's really all that it costs. So the big question now came, how do you collect the data? And what data do you want to collect? So we made the decision that, look, we should use the task force. We're not just, Larry Brown and his staff were going to go off and get all the quantitative data, okay? This had to be about more than that. This was about how you get the task force to really embrace this work and to really understand what the Boston Public School System is all about. So the task force meetings turned into quasi-public hearings. Okay? So we would bring in to testify members from the Boston Public Schools who were responsible for various aspects of what was going on, and other experts, and parents, and nuns, etc., to testify before the task force. And of course, the school committee, some of the school personnel said such outrageous things. They radicalized these professionals and got them really, really angry. One example, we were asking the head of the attendance department, why aren't you going after finding Hispanic kids who should be in school? We don't understand what you're telling us about why you can't do this. And we were pressing him, and he said, get off my back. You know Hispanic kids are immoral. You give them 2 minutes and they'll copulate. What do you want from me? Whoa. So we saw the rank racism that was prevalent in parts of the school system. And so some of these psychiatrists were like, whoa, what's going on? Whoa. Then we brought in the woman who was heading the program you read about. It's called CENTOM, that was providing services, supposedly providing services for pregnant girls who were not allowed to be in school. Okay? And we took her over the coals about, wait a minute, are you really providing comprehensive services? Or how come most of these kids are black? How come none of the staff people are black? I mean, what's going on here? You know, and I said, well, now why aren't these kids in school? Well, the kids aren't in school, she said, because we're trying to protect them. We don't want them to be bumped in and mess up their embryo. We don't want them to fall down the stairs, boom, 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 boom. We're just to protect them. And we said, well, wait a minute. We just brought in last week to testify for us a medical doctor who's an obstetrician, and he laid out the whole case for why it's important for pregnant women, girls included, to stay active, to stay as active as they can until it's time to deliver a baby. That's the most healthy thing physically and psychologically for them. So she says, well, wait a minute, we don't even want, she said, wait a minute, we don't even want teachers who are pregnant in school. Now you want us to have kids who are pregnant in school. What are you talking about? And in fact, teachers who were pregnant were basically forced out of teaching in the Boston Public Schools at that time. So basically what we were doing by using the public hearings was getting greater commitment from the task force members, because we knew at the end of the day, once the report was finished, we had to have enough, at least a nucleus of people who were committed to the implementation stage. Okay? Because this was not going to go on a bookshelf. Okay? We were going to really implement whatever recommendations that we made. So, so that's how we moved ahead. You know that the task force was also very helpful, by the way, in reviewing drafts of the final report. And it was very interesting stuff because poor Larry Brown, he came in with his first draft and we all said, no good. No good, you gotta rewrite the whole damn thing. What are you talking about? No, you're not allowing the data to speak for itself. You're saying, look, you're giving data and you're telling the people, aren't they bad people? You should feel this way, you should think this way. No, that's not going to be a powerful document. You don't do that. Please come back to us with another draft. And he did. And you saw the final draft. And you can tell me what whether you thought it was powerful, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, in early October, the report was completed, and we prepared for its release by first calling in a select group of reporters from the print media and from television to give them a heads up on this blockbuster report that we were about to release, because we wanted them to do some work in finding people they would want to interview. Now, it's always dangerous to do this. You tell them it's embargoed, et cetera, but I've been burned many times, and in many cases, they're so eager to get a scoop on the other media that they sometimes go ahead and do something, like printing something, or when they have agreed they should do it. So we said it was worth taking the risk. And we selected the folks from the media who we knew and trusted, and we made it very clear we did not expect anybody to do any scoop on anybody, okay? Otherwise our relationship was going to be over. The report was released on October 14, 1970, and headlines blazed across the Boston Herald and the Boston Globe. 10,000 children, students, are out of school in Boston, denied their legal right to an education.
Jerry dug up the headline.
Okay?
Can I pass it out?
Yeah, sure. And Boston was stunned. Stunned. Okay? Could not be. Okay? And so we had achieved the first stage of advocacy was to lift this condition to the level of social problem. As you know, we estimated that 7,600 of these students excluded were Spanish-speaking due to lax attendance practices and the non-existence of bilingual education. We had no ability to get accurate attendance figures because the Boston Public Schools was not doing the census required by the state to indicate how many children were in the city, so that you could know how many children should have been in school who were not in school. What they were doing basically was giving the state what of the kids who were in school and saying that's our census. Crazy. Okay? So we fretted, the task force fretted, we drove Larry Brown a little crazy over this, about, wait a minute, we don't have an accurate, we really don't have an accurate count, okay, of the numbers. And is this just, are we just guessing? Is this a good guesstimate of what the deal is? But Larry and the TAF convinced us that they had plowed every source to try to figure out and make a reasonable estimate of the number of kids who were out of school, and it was 10,000, and that was probably conservative. So we said, okay, go ahead. Let's take our chance. When you release a report like this, an advocacy document like this, and you get the press engaged, the first thing you have to figure out is how long can you keep the media window open? Okay? Because you have to know how long you can keep it open, because in certain cases, if you can't keep it open very long, it'll just go away. Public will not know what's going on. So we had to figure out, how do we keep the window open? Okay? And so what we did was we had community meetings. We got ourselves on television and so forth and so on. I got myself into debates with the chairman of the school committee, James Hennigan. Okay? And there were unbelievable things, experiences. And in many cases, one case, Jim Hennigan turned and said, "These folks are lying. The stuff that's in that report is not true. My folks told us they didn't say that stuff." Okay? So he's out to discredit us, okay? Now what he didn't know was that all of the hearings before the task force were taped. Okay? The audio taped. Because we told everybody when they came in that we have a tape recorder here, and then they just, all right. And as what usually happens is people will say, yeah, fine. Then they forget it's on. Okay? And you've had that experience. So Hennigan was going on, I just sat there, and I said, by the way, Mr. Hennigan, do you know that we have tapes? Do you want to hear the tapes? You said your folks didn't say that, so we have it on tape. Do you want to hear the tapes? Oh. Okay? So for us, it was very important that the hearing be taped, because of the usual denial of the Boston Public Schools. And when this kind of blockbuster report came out, they were going to try to discredit us. So what really happened that was important is that David Bartley, the Speaker of the House, was captivated by the report, and he requested 500 copies, I believe, that he wanted to distribute to the legislature and to the community groups he was associated with. He also had a very close relationship with Representative Michael Daley, who was a really strong advocate for what we were doing. He was actually on the task force, didn't come to many meetings, but to have him associated with us, and he was very close to Bartley. And we didn't know that Bartley was really getting serious about trying to do something in terms of legislation. So we sent him reports. He said, no, but I want you all to come in and work with me and my staff to craft some legislation that we can get passed. But the first thing I think we can do that's easy is to pass a bilingual Transitional Education Act. So young people throughout the state who are non-English speaking can have access to good bilingual education. And that came to be in 1971.
So first in the country.
First in the country. Then in 1972 comes Chapter 766, the special education law in Massachusetts. In my judgment, the most progressive piece of education legislation in the history of the Commonwealth. Okay? And it basically guaranteed mainstream education for children with special needs.
Also the first in the country.
And also the first in the country. It became the model for the national legislation, which was called the Education for All Handicapped Children's Act in 1975. And Marion Wright Edelman, who was then head of the Children's Defense Fund, played a major role in getting it passed. Marion Wright Edelman got the idea for the Children's Defense Fund from the task force's work, because she saw the impact in terms of legislation, et cetera, et cetera. So she decided, she was at the Harvard School, she was at the Harvard Center for Law and Education, and she said, okay, I'm going to Washington, I'm going to start the Children's Defense Fund. And in fact, Larry Brown was one of the first people on the board. And I was on the board for a while as well. But she played a major role, okay?
Can I point out that she also chose to follow the lead of Hubie and the task force and write a report.
Yes.
And you heard during the election, the young Hillary Clinton was at law school, and she came to volunteer for Marion and was sent out to interview
Yeah, so
students to
exactly.
identify them being out of school.
The first report that the Children's Defense Fund did was a report called Children Out of School in America. Okay? And that came off the heels of what we were doing. So, here's what immediately happened. Some parents of a student whose daughter had been expelled from the East Pepperell High School. She was a junior, got pregnant, excellent student. She got expelled. They came to MAC. It was now MAC, the Mass Advocacy Center. Eventually became Mass Advocates for Children. At that time, it was MAC. She came to MAC and said, "Can you help me?" She read the report, our report, no, "Can you help us?" We said, "Yeah." So in April 1971, MAC attorneys filed a complaint in the U.S. District Court. And the judge in the U.S. District Court ordered immediate reinstatement of the girl to school, saying that education is a right, not a privilege. She's back in school. We took that ruling and went to the Boston Public Schools and said, "We want you to now admit pregnant girls into the Boston Public Schools." Okay? And promulgate a policy that you're going to follow the court, which they did. Okay? So pregnant girls are in school in some kind of great numbers. Okay? And then we went to the Commission of Education, Neil Sullivan, and said, "We want you to now tell all of the superintendents throughout this Commonwealth that they have to abide by the law of the U.S. District Court." And he sent out a directive, and that happened. So one of the other things that we wanted to get done was to have a real census required by the State Department of Education. Okay? And so we told the commissioner, with our advocacy pressure style, get it done. Well, they weren't getting it done. And I, as well as Larry Brown, said, "To hell with these people. They got all these high-paid folk down there. They got the staff. They ought to get it done." Well, we woke up one night and said, "Well, it's not a matter of them not wanting to do it. They don't know how to do it. They don't know how to do it. So we got to go get in there and help them." Because really, administrative advocacy is a hurt-help process. You have to have enough ability to hurt the bureaucracy if they don't do what they should do. But you also have to have the ability and the temperament to help it if it doesn't know what to do. Okay, and some of the people at Bagley, they were like, come on, Hubie. I'm like, we're not going down there to help these people. Come on, we got other things to do. I said, no, you're going down to help these people. We sent Barry Hunt down there. He was fantastic. And we got the thing done. New census. But remember that. It's a help-hurt process. And often you have advocates who are not temperamentally into helping. They're into kicking you in the behind, but they ain't into helping. Okay? So you saw in the report, and one of the things I think is powerful about the report and good about the report is that we gave a set of recommendations to different sectors in terms of what their responsibility was in regard to this problem and what they needed to do. Okay? And some of the recommendations spoke directly to social service and mental health agencies, saying you're not doing enough, you're disengaged with the schools, you're part of the problem. These young people and their parents need services, and you better get to doing it. So we called them all together. And we said, look, we read a report, and you're part of this problem. Are you prepared to have your services made available free to the schools? And we will give you a mechanism by which you can do it, called the Alliance for Coordinated Services. So we created the Alliance for Coordinated Services, led by an incredible young woman, the late Smith. What kind of first name?
Oh, yeah.
Mary Ellen Smith. Mary Ellen Smith. How can I say Mary Ellen Smith? Okay. And we brought together 176 agencies, public and private, who committed themselves to going into schools and providing services. So this was one of the results. Now, of course, the big problem or challenge we had was if we were going to stay in business in terms of implementing all of these recommendations, or most of these recommendations, we had to have money to stay on the ball field. If you can't find a way to stay on the ball field, it's over. Because as all of you know, advocacy is no big mystery. It's no big man. They just have to know that you're not going away. Okay? Targets of change have to know that you're not going away. You're still going to be coming at them. But you can't keep coming at them unless you have resources to have an organization with the capability of doing so. So we take out the report, and we go to see Fred Glenn, who's the head of the Permanent Charity Fund, now known as the Boston Foundation. And we said, well, you better give us some money because we're going to implement this report. Oh, come on, what are you talking about? First of all, foundations didn't give money to advocacy. United Way did not give money for advocacy. They didn't know what the hell you're talking about. You give money for services. We don't give money for just advocating for what? What? No. So we just persisted. And so finally Glenn said, okay, I'll give you $25,000 and go, just go. Okay? So we got $25,000. At that time, a lot of money. And of course, having the credibility of the Permanent Charity Fund helped us get money from some other foundations, fund us as well. So we knew that we were going to stay on the ball field and hold the case.
Finally, Mary Brown, Steve Bing, and others came to a board meeting and said, look, we don't have any teeth to deal with this issue. We've got to hire a litigator to go after the school system and probably a class action suit, blah, blah, blah. The board said, some of the board said, we don't think so. No, we don't think so. You told us you're into administrative advocacy. You made the case to us that we were into administrative advocacy because, one, you don't know what kind of judge you're going to get if you take legal action. You may get a judgment that's worse than what you would get if you rain concessions out of the bureaucracy. And you told us it costs a lot of money. That's what you told us, and that's what you've been doing. So now you want to get us into litigation. And we're afraid that if we let you get a litigator, you're going to be, instead of that being the last resort, that's going to become the first resort. He said, no, that's not, no, it'll be the last resort. We swear on a stack of Bibles, blah, 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 blah. Okay? Oh, they got a little crazy, okay? But finally we all agreed, okay, let's hire a litigator. And along came Tom Miller. Okay? Thank God. Along came Tom Miller. And as you know, it was in 1976 that Tom Miller and Mac filed a class action suit, Allen versus McDonough, to get the courts to force the Boston Public Schools to actually implement Chapter 7-6 as it was intended to be implemented. Okay? And it was a law, and as we all, we also said, that you get into legal advocacy and legal action, it often takes a long time. Well, in the case of Allen versus McDonough, it went from 1976 to 1998, almost 22 years. Okay? And it ate up a lot of money. Now, the good news is that after it was all over, Mac got attorney's fees. They got a big chunk of money that they hadn't really expected. It came at a time when they might have gone under. They hadn't gotten the money, okay? Because they had spent all this money on this legal case that had been going on for a long, long time. And at one point, Judge Morse appointed a master to basically oversee the special education part of the school system and to make sure they were complying with what he had required. And so there were monitors, masters, all of this sort of stuff, until ultimately in 1998, the court was removed. Okay, so what's the point of all of this? One point is that you really never win, because the victories are snatched away from you. Okay? Because usually, and it's just human nature, you get something done, and you think it's going to continue to be done in the way in which people agreed to do it, or the court said you had to do it, and you go on to another problem, and then you take your eye off the ball, and you look around, there's been enormous slippage. Okay? So if you're really into advocacy, and Mac knows this very well, if you don't keep your eye on the ball forever, you are going to be in trouble fighting the same old battle again in a different way, in a different stage, etc., etc. Okay? Of course, what is, for me, inspiring about what we did is that all of this
success in terms of legislation and so forth. And in building an institution which became Massachusetts Advocates for Children, it all started in a relatively small social service agency in Roxbury. That's where it started. Okay? And because of commitment, and I would say at times very smart strategy, we were able to keep moving until we got some victories that were very, very important. Just don't forget, this started in a very small social agency in Roxbury. And those of us who know the social work literature, there's a part of it which talks about going from case to cause. Okay? Now, we got so clinical in the social work world, okay, that we sometimes forget that what we should be doing with the clinical cases that we're working with is getting from that information and data which talks about the dysfunctions of systems that are hurting people. And that information should be put together in such a way that it can be used to get systemic and policy change. Okay? That's what the caseworkers at the Roxbury Multi-Service Center did. They took the data they were getting from their clinical work and said, somebody's got to use this in a way to get systemic change, to get policy change, to get legislative change, whatever. It's not enough to do case-by-case intervention. In fact, we had a mantra at times which said, case-by-case intervention can often be Band-Aid on cancer. Okay, now, I don't denigrate good chemical work, don't get me wrong, okay? But if it's not used in a way to solve the causes of problems that get folks into trouble, then maybe we are a part of the problem. So, let me shut up. Said too much. Let's hear from you. What do you think?
I just want to say, when I was rereading this, this was given to me as a gift. I ended up on that class action a little bit later, right? And we had some successes. The executive director at the time came in and said, this is our gift to you. You have your own, very own copy. So I've cherished this, best gift I ever got. But I wanted to say, when just reviewing, in reading these stories of the kids, they sound strikingly similar to some of the cases we have in the clinic and cases we're getting, and I'm sure what's coming in on everybody's. The difference is that because of your work, we have laws to work with, which is amazing. But it does demonstrate how we have to just keep at it.
Well, especially in the Boston schools, where we know that the percentage of kids who are still segregated in segregated settings is still far higher than anywhere else in the state, any other city in the state, and double the average in the state. So we're still fighting the same battle of segregated settings.
Well, but the good thing to be said about that is you have used resources to deal with reforming the system, okay? To try to get the broken system totally repaired, okay? Now, it's still broken in many ways, okay? But it's important what doing it. She's about to be on the city council, by the way. Okay? I believe she's going to be in the city council. Okay? And from that perch, she will continue to do work advocating for public education and for the schools to get themselves better. Okay? So, but you've got to come up with more creative ways to get the schools better. Okay? I'll tell you about something that we're thinking about right now is that I'm thinking about having some what I call strategic conversations. One of the things that happens is that in Boston and many cities is that people who are doing very important work never have a group of respected leaders who they can come before and tell them what they're trying to do, what they're trying to achieve, and how they're trying to get there. Okay? And how they're trying to get there. And who will really just listen, and people, who just listen to them. And then at some point say, okay, do you need some help? If you're going to do the right thing, or the smart thing, it might get it to a different place. So we're talking about a strategic conversation to be had with the mayor, called Walsh, who I believe is going to be elected big time, re-elected big time. And so after the election, we're going to ask him to come before a conversation and basically say to him, I'll say to him, it looks to me like you're going to be a good mayor, based upon what I've seen so far. But you're not going to be a great mayor, if that's what you want to be, unless you fix the Boston public schools. So we're here tonight, 10 or 12 of us, to just listen to you for at least a half an hour. Tell us how you're thinking about transforming the Boston public schools. We just want to shut our mouths and hear what you have to say. And then we'll have 15 minutes for clarifying questions. And then it will be open for advice, if you want it, or if you don't want it, or whatever, what's with advice. Okay? So, that's what some of us are, my idea, and some people say, yeah, we have to do this, okay? Because we just don't give people doing important work an opportunity to hear them out. To hear them out. And then say, okay, you can do the right thing. I'll tell you an experience I had when I created the Corporation for Boston, and we used to have these dinner meetings with very interesting, powerful black and white leaders. And we invited the superintendent of schools, Bud Spillane, to a meeting, dinner meeting. And he came. I meet him at the door. And he says, oh, Hubie, I'm really sorry. I can't stay very long because there's a crisis up at one of the high schools, and my drive is outside, and out in 15 minutes I'm going to have to get out of here. I said, really? I said, well, come on in. Meet the people. He came on in, met the people, began to talk. He stayed for 2 hours. Okay? He stayed for 2 hours. This whole business about having his driver outside was because he didn't believe that this was going to be a conversation where we would listen to him. He thought he was going to get the traditional stuff of folks who were going to try to get something they wanted for themselves or their organization or whatever. He didn't believe it was going to be a civic public interest thing. Okay? And when he found out it wasn't, he stayed for 2 hours. Okay? And it so happened that that dinner meeting ended up with him, with us helping him get a black vote that he wanted for his contract to be renewed. He had the white votes he needed, but he said, Huey, I can't get my contract renewed with only the white school committee members, people voted for me. So we brought in John O'Brien, we said, hey, okay, he wants your vote, he needs your vote, tell him what you want him to do for black kids in schools. He wants your vote. He desperately wants your vote. Okay, so, and that meeting led to me doing another version of the Alliance for Coordinated Services in 1984, which was basically called the Boston Human Services Collaborative. Okay? It started all from a meeting where we just listened to the man. He said, just tell us why you are here. What do you want to do? What are you trying to get done? How are you doing it? We'll tell you where the landmines are. If you want to know where they are. Okay?
So one of the things that's different, I want to check with my colleagues too, who run agencies, that's different from 1969 in terms of the resistance that you ran into, is that through a succession of superintendents, they pretty much are saying the right thing. The aspirational, the plans, the aspirations, they all use the right buzzwords, they all want closing this gap, closing that gap, doing all the things, but operationally can't happen. And so there's a big disconnect between what the leadership says at the administrative level and what actually happens on the ground. And I don't know if you were seeing that also, Marlise, and from your perspective. But that kind of, in some ways, begs for a different kind of strategy, perhaps. Because they'll agree with you. Yes, we need to do this, we need to do that. But how to make that happen sometimes is a real challenge.
Well, my perspective is that Marty Walsh, and I have no big thing with Marty Walsh, okay, but Marty Walsh is the first mayor that I have seen. I saw Collins, I saw White, I've seen them all, okay? And they were basically disengaged from public schools, even Menino. They basically did not want to do anything to change the Boston public schools and do the hard work that was required to do it. Okay? That's the problem we had. Okay? They had the power by virtue of the fact they controlled the school committee. Okay? I had to be the person who gave them that power by being the head of Mayor Flynn's school reform panel. Okay, and we recommended that the school committee go from an elected body to an appointed body with certain dangers involved there. But that current school committee was so awful that we figured, and they weren't doing their work. In fact, Mac would send some of these folks their policy statement. They wouldn't even read the damn things. McGuire and John O'Brien were being teed up by Mac because some big policy thing was going to happen, and they didn't read the documents. Okay? They wouldn't even read the documents. So I got fed up, okay, with the elected school committee, who was mostly about trying to get themselves reelected. So I took a lot of heat in the black community for taking away their vote. Okay? So my judgment is we may have a mayor who's going to be seriously engaged. We'll see. We'll see.
Some of the students wrote some amazing questions for you.
Oh, yeah,
I want to just make sure,
Oh, shut up. Yeah.
put anybody on the spot, but there's some,
Yes.
Yeah, kind of going off of that comment about the disconnect between what leaders say and do. I guess what shocked me is that when you were writing this report, people came to your task force meetings and participated in these public hearings and said things that were really bad for them. I feel like today that would be, that almost wouldn't happen. I guess people would, again, frame things the way that they think people want to hear them. They wouldn't admit that they were doing these things because we see them as wrong, but they're still happening. So how do you think that today we can, I mean, all of, like, these issues are still happening. How do you think we can get the conversation back up to the level where it should be?
Well, it's a good question, and it's a deep issue. Okay? First of all, we have a very disconnected culture in Boston. Okay? Very disconnected. Okay? People come here to do work, and nobody connects with them really. Okay? Nobody connects with them. Okay? I've been, and I'm part of the problem. Okay? The people I've worked with for years, who I know, love, care about, been to the barricades with, who have never been in my house. Or they've been in my house once. They've never been in my house. Okay? In some other city, that would be nuts. It'd be nuts. You know Mel King since 1963 and he's been in your house twice? Really? Okay? There's no relationship. There's no serious connective tissue. Okay? Okay? And as a result of that, I'll just talk about the black community. I was with a friend the other day and I was saying, one of the things that black leaders, so-called leadership, don't even do, we have somebody who comes into Boston and we don't even welcome the person. We don't even welcome the person. We don't even take, let's have a lunch and invite the person. They'll say, welcome to Boston. Like, what do you know? What do you need? Why are you here? Let me tell you where the mines are. Let me tell you, we don't do that.
Boston kind of does the opposite.
Yeah,
When I
exactly.
was interviewing for jobs in Boston, they're like, you don't really want to stay in Boston, do you? And I'm like, I do.
Yeah, okay. So, what happens is these people come in, they don't know who the leadership is in the community, black community. Let's talk black community right now. They don't know who it is. Okay? And they may in 2 years find out who some of them are. They're gonna try to get over by their relationship with white folks who are going to save them, okay, or help them, okay. But eventually they're going to get into trouble, okay. They're going to get into trouble, and usually when they get into trouble, everybody runs away from them. They run away from them, okay. So that's what we have going. That's a real part of the problem. Okay? A real part of the problem. So we had this I had students at BU. I was dean of BU for 16 years. I'd bring students in here from all over the country, particularly from the South. We grew from the South. And in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, at least the black students from the South were in my office saying, Dean Jones, please explain to me what these people. I'm walking down Bay State Road and I say good morning and hey. Okay? What is going on here? I hire faculty members who come into my office and say, Hubie, please explain to me how you get into this community. Okay? I had 2 black reporters from the Boston Globe, who I didn't know, who had seen me in the media, and they called me up and said, can we come and talk to you? I said, yeah, come talk to me. How do we get into this community? We can't figure it out. How do we get into this community? I've never lived in a city where at least some people didn't tell me the things I ought to go to. Hey, you ought to go to the MAC Gala. You ought to go to the NAACP this. You ought to go to this. I can sit up here at the Boston Globe and I can never know where to go. And you know what? 2 years later, they were out of Boston. Okay? So part of what we're dealing with is a culture that's cold. I almost go back to the Puritans. Okay? A culture that's cold, disconnected, and people aren't reaching out to anybody. Okay? So when you do reach out to somebody, they say, oh boy, they got something, they got some agenda. Oh boy, what's this about? Which I got from what's Blaine? Oh no. Okay? So we've got to find ways to turn that around. Okay? So for instance, we now have a new person coming in to run the MBTA. Latino guy. Okay? If he doesn't get embraced, if he isn't really welcomed, if he isn't really understood as why he came, what he's trying to do, an extraordinarily difficult job, he will be in trouble in 2 years. I put all my money in the world on it. Just like Beverly Scott, his predecessor, was in trouble. Okay? So that's part of the culture. That is part of the environment. And if we don't become a more connected, trusting people, we can't work together. Okay? We can't work together. Okay? I taught a course on advocacy at BU School of Social Work. So I had a guy named Al Lupo, now dead, from the Boston Globe, come in to talk to the class about how you use the media to get over. Okay? And he came in, he was kind of brutal, a little arrogant. He said, hey, you people don't even know who writes the stories that of the issues you're working on. You don't even know who people are. You never even call them and tell them, hey, you did a good job on a story. You don't even, we don't have to write. And he would say, we don't have to write your stories. We don't have to write your stories. Blah, blah, blah. He said, you're all a waste of time. In a nice way. Not nice. You're a waste of time. You don't know how to use the media. You don't know who's writing your stuff. You don't reach out to them. You never say thank you. Okay, so he left. And the class said, that son of a bum. What's he coming in here with his arrogant stuff, telling us he doesn't have a responsibility to write these stories? That's what he's paid for. He does have a responsibility. Bob, what does he do? Bob? I just listened to him while I'm running off at the mouth. I said, hey man, the man told you how it works. He told you how it works. Okay? He told you how it works. So you decide whether or not you're going to pay attention to who's writing your stuff. You're going to have to pay attention whether you develop a relationship with them of trust. Okay? And then, based upon that, you can put them up against the wall occasionally. Okay? Brian McGorry, who's the editor of the Boston Globe, he's still flabbergasted when I write him an email saying, terrific piece of you, terrific editorial today. Needed to be said. Thank you. Thank you. I get to think back, oh, Hubie, thanks for, oh, wonderful, okay? The only thing he hears is when he does the wrong thing and somebody wants to bring him before a meeting and ream him out. And then it's too late. Everybody's screaming, yelling, everybody's angry, nothing gets done. Okay? Okay? And I was at such a meeting where they brought him in to read the writing act to him. You're not covering the black community, you're not doing this, you're not doing that, boom, 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 and they went after him. He said, look, I'm trying to do, I'm trying to do better. Oh, okay. So I wrote him, 2 weeks later, I wrote him a letter saying, well, I think you really want to do the right thing, so I want you to do this thing. I want you to cover this thing that I think is important, because I can't get the attention of the governor. Okay? They did a front page story in the Metro section. I saw the governor in 2 days. And then I thanked him. I told him what happened. I don't know, maybe I'm being responsible.
No, it's very responsive, I think. I mean, the hardest thing one of the hard things I had to learn one of the many hard things I had to learn as a lawyer was to learn how to work across the table. We're trained, I was trained to be a litigator, and I was that next second litigator that got hired, whatever at MAC. And we're not trained to work across the table, and yet the first comeuppance I had was when they were basically decimating. It was a bad time for special ed, and they were decimating the laws, and I'm a litigator, I'm helpless, right? Because it's going through the legislature, and then Julia, who's always been my partner in crime, and has kept the special ed laws going. I mean, it's really been on her shoulders a lot. Said, we're going to work across the table, and she set up an interdisciplinary group with all the people we hated, right? We litigated against, and it sued, and the Department of Ed was there. Who all was there, Julie? The Superintendent's Association, the Principals Association, everyone had to be there if we were going to agree on, what about these laws could be kept. And it transformed me and a lot of what we do at MAC now, because we began to understand what Hubie had been telling us about help and hurt. Because you gotta, as lawyers, we have to learn how to work across the table, even with people we've sued. They're not bad people. And form these relationships, and through these relationships, under Julia's leadership, we kept those regulations. She turned regs that were being decimated by the Department of Ed into law. She just took them and got them into law. But she did it by getting agreements with the superintendents and, all of these folks that we used as young attorneys saw as bad guys. And everything seems to boil down to relationships. And in this time, we're in a very challenging time. We have a good Commonwealth, and we there's good people in it. And if we don't figure out how to work together, it's a problem. And it doesn't mean you give up those strengths we have learned as a lawyer. I mean, we have great skills for doing this, great skills for negotiating. And we do know how, at the right time to file that lawsuit. It just doesn't need to be the first shot. I think I hear Hubie saying, stay with the complexity of it. Figure it out. Somebody you think might be awful actually might be a nice guy. And not that you agree with them, but you might be able to get something more than you might have from suing them. But all of our skills are so important. It's just that even those skills with the media that Hubie's talking about, that's very much an advocacy skill. So it's just system change has nuances to it that I think really make things interesting.
I'm an attorney. I don't want to cut in line on any students.
You're an attorney, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to hear
Let's
some
hear
more
it.
students, yeah.
So I'm Matt Krager from the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights, and I knock doors for Kim Jong. I wanted to ask, and there's so much. I wanted to ask about the school committee piece of it, and the question I had was, as you were in that process, in your eyes, were there conditions that you wanted to see for Boston in a way that that would suggest we as a city would be ready for an elected school committee rather than an appointed school committee? And have you seen anything in the intervening years since that makes you think we are, or makes you hopeful that we would?
Well, when we were studying the whole business of should we change, we went around the country and looked at the experiences of various cities. Some had gone from an elected school committee to an appointed school committee to an elected school committee. Some had gone from an elected school committee to an appointed school committee. And we came to the conclusion that this was basically cyclical. And that we probably were, if we were going to be successful with going to an appointed school committee, because of the fact that it wasn't really doing its job, that eventually it was going to go back to an elected school committee. Okay? That the appointed school committee will fail to do what everybody wants it to do, and there'll be a hue and cry to go back to an elected school committee. So we ended up saying, this is cyclical. And you're only doing this move because the current arrangement isn't doing enough to make the system work. Okay? And therefore you have to make the change. But it's not going to be forever. So I believe that at some point this appointed school committee will be replaced by an elected school committee. Okay? Because they may not do what they need to do in the interest of moving the school and changing it. Maybe that was the way in which I was able to refool myself in going ahead and supporting going to an elected school, appointed school committee. Okay? So if it doesn't work, it should be replaced, and you go back to an elected school committee. What you get with an elected school committee, obviously, is people worrying about getting reelected and just doing constituency stuff, and not reading the max papers and policy stuff, so they can make really good policy decisions that are very important to the lives of kids.
Patronage, jobs.
And patronage and jobs and all that. So we said, no, we got to get rid of that. But we then said, okay, but you're giving the power to a mayor. And the mayor may not be a good mayor. He may put a lot of not so good people on the school committee with his appointed power. How do you keep a check on a mayor to make sure he has the right school committee? Okay, so there are pros and cons both ways. There's pros and cons both ways.
Any questions? Don't be shy.
I'm really curious about sort of the process of working through the task force or working through some of these other groups with folks from sort of different professional and community backgrounds, how you manage difference when that becomes a point of contention on the group, and sort of build consensus or maintain consensus going forward.
At times it was difficult because some of the folks who were on the committee had allegiance to the Boston Public Schools because their work at Harvard, for instance, okay, was related to what they would do. They had to have a relationship with the Boston Public Schools, and they didn't want that in jeopardy. Okay, so one of the people, Raquel Combs in here, said, the psychiatrist said, I can't sign the report. And we said, fine, we understand. We understand. And it's not in your interest because of your relationship, with the Boston Public Schools. But you were here. And I think you were here because you knew we were doing honorable work. But we're not gonna say, we're not gonna get a big fight with you. You don't have to sign it. You don't have to sign it. We had a couple, in the next report we did something for the children. We had the Commissioner of Mental Health, because we were after the Commissioner of Mental Health in a brutal way. He tried to get members of the task force to, one, not only not signing the document, okay, but he wanted them to give him information about the report before it was going to be released. Okay? And the commissioner also went to our foundations to try to destroy us. Okay? We were bad people, and we were not honorable, and we were making up stuff, and we were out just to be troublemakers. Okay? Okay. So we had that. We had that kind of thing going. But you have to keep your equilibrium. Okay? Because even the people who were under pressure not to do certain things were smart people who had something to say. In fact, some of them had something to say that was very good about when we're reviewing the reports for publication. Okay? So, if you've got to remember that you don't burn bridges. When I was young, I used to burn a lot of bridges. Okay, it just came back to bite me. Because you never know who you're going to be working with again. You never know who you're going to need to get something done. Okay? So you certainly aren't going to run a task force or an action system in a way in which you're going to unnecessarily get yourself into a bad, hostile, crazy situation with somebody who's in a different place you are in. You accept the fact that they're in a different place. You try to understand why they're there. You try to persuade them why they shouldn't be in that place because of what where you think they need to be. But ultimately, you accept where they land. Okay, and you don't excommunicate them or whatever. I mean, you just don't do that. Okay, Boston's a village. Okay, big city. It's a big city, but Boston's a village. What you do on this side of town today is known on the other side of town till, by noon. Okay? In fact, if you're skillful, I have said things on one side of town in the morning that I want to be heard on the other side of town by noon without my fingerprints being on it. Okay? And it works. Because this is a village. Doesn't seem like that. We're a big city, right? But Boston's a village. Okay? So, and that being the case, you don't unnecessarily burn bridges. You respect people's differences. You don't castigate them. You don't demonize them. Okay? And of course, in today's world, that's all we're doing. We're just demonizing everybody. Right? That's what we're doing. Okay? We're just demonizing folks. And as a result of that, we have a very coarse civil discourse. Okay? I gave a speech on this 3 years ago, long before Trump. My biggest concern is that we are demonizing people who we disagree with. And we're creating a very coarse civil discourse that is going to ultimately destroy the body politic if we keep it up. unfortunately, my speech of 3 years is here full flower. Okay? And we can contribute to that. You know, I'm a tough guy, but I need to be. Because at the end of the day, it's about the interests of people, who are vulnerable, who need somebody to advocate for. Okay? I can, people tell you, I can be tough. Okay? But appropriately so. You know when to draw a line, but you can draw lines without demonizing people, without cutting people off, without saying nasty things about them, without trying to get them fired. We got a lot, you don't know, we got a lot of people, I have a lot of people trying to get me fired. Call my bosses. Okay, call my bosses and say, hey, this guy's, you gotta watch it, this guy's a troublemaker. Okay? Fortunately, I was doing my job. I was a fabulous professional. I was reliable. All my bosses could say that I don't know about all this stuff you're concerned about, but all I can tell you, he's a fabulous. We love this guy. He's doing fabulous work here. End of discussion. Particularly in 1963, when I led a general strike in Boston to protest all forms of racial discrimination. Okay, in the midst of Boston civil rights. Okay. Okay. There were people who wanted my head. Okay? People who wanted my head. They called my boss and said, hey, okay. That's what I tell, people who I train to be advocates. I said, the first thing is, don't be telling me how you're going to change the world. You're leaving the School of Social Work and you're going out to work in a social agency. Don't go into the social agency the first day and be in the cafeteria and tell everybody what they got to do to shape up. They don't even know if you're valuable. They don't know if you know what you're doing. Okay? You've got to build credibility. Okay? So you have some social capital. Without social capital, you can't get anything done. Right? Okay? So that's the first thing. So don't be going out and telling everybody how you're going to change the agency and you're going to, I don't know. First of all, be a good colleague who can be relied upon, who can come to your aid if you need it. Okay? Who can allow you to make a mistake and let you recover from it. And not kill them off. Okay? That's what you've got to have going for you. Okay? If you're going to be trusted. Okay? So I made a lot of people mad in this town for other things. But they know I'm a trusted person. I'm not out to kill people. I'm not out to they know I'm basically trustworthy. You think so? Okay? All right? That's what you have going for you. Okay? And so all of you, as you go about your careers, you will be amassing social capital. Okay? Because of what you've done, how you worked with people, how you respected people, etc., etc. Now I'm 83, so I'm fortunate that I have a lot of social capital, and I spend my time. I had a wonderful thing of trying to figure out where I spend it, because I can't take it to the grave. I can't take it to the grave, so I spend it on the things that I really want done. I spend it mostly with the people I mentor. Because people come to be mentored, they want to be mentored, and I say, why do you want to be mentored by me? Well, I know what I want. They want me to vouch for them. They want to borrow some of my social capital so they can get what they need to do the big things they want to do. That's what they want. And I say, well, if I think you're honest and have integrity, and you really are serious about this, yeah, you can borrow my social capital. Yeah, fine. If you're not, I'll cut you off. I've made some mistakes. but very few. Because but, and all of you will at some time, you being mentored now, and you'll be mentoring others, right? And so, at the end of the day, you have a lot of social capital. And that's what's going to get you to be able to accomplish things that you want to get done. At the end of the day, it's just that simple. Not simple, but it's just that clear, right? So you can be right. Okay, you can be right about things you want to see happen. Doesn't mean it's going to happen. You're right, but you've got to be in a place where you can work with others to get it done. First thing I ask people who come to me with their big idea is like, "Oh, who can you do this with? Who can you collaborate with to get this done?" No, I'm just doing myself. I said, no. This idea maybe is not new under the sun. Maybe you need to find out other people who have done it or want to do it, and maybe you should be collaborating with somebody else. I can't mentor you unless you can come back to me in about a month and tell me how you can collaborate with somebody around this idea. Otherwise, I can't help you. Whoa. Okay? All right? And if they want your social capital bad enough, they may try to collaborate with somebody so they can come back. And you can say, okay, all right, I'll vouch for you. I'll vouch for a foundation with you. I'll do da-da-da-da-da, right? Okay? That's, I think that's the deal. So thank you very much for having me. I hope I didn't bore you too much. And just keep doing what you're doing. Okay? Just keep doing what you're doing. If you commit yourself to doing big change, make sure you understand it is a lifetime commitment. Okay? It's a lifetime commitment. I'm 83. I've been working at the Boston Public Schools thing since forever. And I'm still at it. I'm right now trying to help solve the fact that there are 24,000 children, students, who come to school in Boston from shelters and motels. Okay? And they're expected to learn. Crazy. Okay? Crazy. Okay? And we're trying to figure out a way to solve the problem. And I got a problem with the people I'm working with because they won't do what I tell them. And that is, it's not a social problem in Boston yet. It's a condition. You've got to lift it to the level of a social problem. And unless you do that, you're not going to solve this problem. Well, we don't know. We got this coalition. We don't want to get people pissed off. Blah, 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 blah. I said, okay. So we don't want to do the media thing yet. No, we don't want to do the callback. If you don't do the media thing and blast this like this across the pages of the Boston Globe and the hell's not here, but whatever. Okay? Nobody in this town, the public generally doesn't know that 24,000 kids are homeless coming to school. And you think you're going to solve it just behind the scenes engineering. No. Okay? So I'm just sitting back and listening to them, and they want to. Okay, go ahead. What I can tell you is that you ain't not going to solve the problem. Unless you get out there and make the public know that it's going on and it's got to be dealt with. Okay, that's what I learned when I did this. That's what I learned. I try to tell them. They say, well, I don't know, Hubie, come on, you're old school. Thanks.
This should just be a piece of paper to wave around. A small token of appreciation. At least you could have it. You could put it
Oh,
up
wow.
on your.
Hey, thank you.
You can see yourself from.
Yeah,
you're a
I had
good-looking guy.
here.
It's a frank box.
Thanks for being, appreciate it. Good luck to you all.